toughest caustic criticism of those who have criticized this administration. Let's take a look at what he said yesterday, and then I want to get your response.
I recount that history because, once again, we face similar challenges, efforts to confront the rising threat of a new type of fascism. With the growing lethality and the increasing availability of weapons, can we truly afford to believe that somehow, some way, vicious extremists can be appeased?
Congresswoman Pelosi, you have heard the Secretary of Defense. He is now saying that critics of this administration are essentially like Nazi-era appeasers.
I have long thought that the Secretary of Defense's judgment has been impaired. 2.5 years ago, I called for his resignation. He speaks for the administration, so I can only assume that his words are the words of the President. If they are not, it behooves the President of the United States to reject this characterization of political debate in our country. The Secretary referencing World War II is interesting. We have now been in Europe. We have now been in Iraq longer than we were in Europe for World War II. But the Secretary to talk about for him to talk about moral clarity when Abu Ghraib happened on his watch and destroyed our moral credibility in the world is interesting as well.
You have called the Iraq War a grotesque mistake, and what Secretary Rumsfeld said yesterday is that those types of comments essentially are helping the enemy, that the media over there takes those comments and portrays them, and those embolden terrorists.
What the Secretary must be forgetting is that what emboldens the enemy is sending our troops into the line of fire without the equipment they need to protect themselves and to get the job done. What emboldens the enemy is sending them there without the military intelligence to get the job done. What emboldens the enemy is their lack of knowledge of the ground truth, or maybe we're in denial about what is actually happening there. Democrats are deadly serious about fighting for the common defense. In order to do so, you must know your enemy. Clearly, the Bush administration did not when it went into Iraq. In order to protect the American people, you have to know your power. And we are diminishing that power by this war in Iraq, which is the wrong war. It is not the war on terror. It is the wrong war. We should have stayed in Afghanistan longer in a fuller force to get the job done there.
As the Democratic leader in the House, however, I'm sure that you saw the comments of Secretary Rumsfeld and the previous day's comments by Vice President Cheney, where he accused critics of, quote-unquote, self-defeating pessimism. We've heard Karl Rove also say that Democrats are obstacles to national security. The President is expected to address the American Legion on Thursday, and we're hearing from the White House that essentially this is a series of speeches that will kick off this third round of the defense of the Iraq War, just as, of course, we're getting ready to commemorate the 5-year anniversary of 9/11, and we're just 10 weeks away from the November elections. Do you see now what the Republican strategy is to defeat the Democrats in November, and how do the Democrats plan to respond to that?
Well, it's not a question of responding to it. It's assuming our responsibility to protect the American people. Let's take a measure of the failures of the Bush administration in this regard. Don't take it from me. The 9/11 Commission has given the government D's and F's in providing for homeland security. Independent analysis have said that the war in Iraq is weakening our national security, our military strength, to protect America against threats to our national security wherever they may appear. 5 years after 9/11, our first responders in most parts of the country, police, fire, and emergency services people, do not have the equipment they need to communicate in real time. Ports are not secure, borders are not secure. The administration has a lot to answer for. But what do? Best defense is a good offense. We will not be swift-boated by them. We again call for a military second to none to protect the American people, diplomatic alliances to maintain the peace, to stop terrorism, to stop the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. This administration has hampered our ability to do that by losing the credibility we have lost in the world because of the war in Iraq.
Congresswoman, if one could characterize what is the Democratic